Dancing is the great popular art of the black peoples, and the rhythms of Africa have long ago crossed the seas and become part of the history of music in the modern world. This is a Mandinka dance of West Africa, in which the spirit of the forest comes to condemn wrong behavior. At first sight it may seem wild and primitive, but the dance is more complex than it looks. To the Mandinka, it has a religious meaning and a moral purpose. There are references to ritual, to myths, and stories about the past. In a country where little was written down, and stories are still often told in the form of myth and music, the dance itself is a living embodiment of Mandinka history. Many Africans today live in modern cities where the dominant influence seems to be European, not African. The old history and traditions are half forgotten beneath the cars and the concrete. Africa once had its own cities, its own civilizations, and now there's a growing awareness of the dignity and splendor of the past. But beyond the cities, in the empty solitudes, there seems at first to be no history to remember. Scientists are now agreed that human life first took shape in Africa, long before it evolved anywhere else on Earth. But development in those early days was extremely slow, and until a few thousand years ago, most of this huge continent, like most of the rest of the world, was almost empty of people. Before men learned to farm, the land could support only a few scattered groups of hunters. This is the story of African peoples over the centuries, of how they learned to develop the skills that enabled them to overcome huge difficulties imposed on them by their environment. The pioneering peoples who set out to master their continent long ago had to overcome tremendous obstacles. They had to survive in a climate and ecology of ferocious extremes. They had to fight off an army of killing fevers, pests, tropical diseases, man-eating beasts. And they had to learn how to farm under tropical conditions. Their mastering of their continent has to be seen, I think, as one of the decisive achievements of human history. I've chosen to visit three peoples, each with their own part in the story. These are the Dogon of Mali, whose art and whose dances keep their history alive for them. The people of Sukur in northeastern Nigeria still live in the stone-built villages of their ancestors, and still follow a way of life which they've evolved for themselves through the centuries. The Pokot, a people of northern Kenya, have defied efforts to modernize their way of life. They've achieved their own balance with nature and are content with it. But long before these peoples learned how to master their continent, small groups such as the Khoi or Bushmen had made their own contribution. Until recently they lived by hunting and gathering, just as the earliest human beings are known to have done. Khoi technology has remained essentially Stone Age, even though they now use iron-tipped arrows borrowed from their more advanced neighbors. The Khoi have devised complex arrow poisons made from a mixture of plant extracts and the toxic entrails of a species of beetle larva. Stone Age or not, their skill at tracking game has never been surpassed. The Twa peoples of the forests of Zaire, better known to us as pygmies, also lived a wandering life as hunters. This 50-year-old film records the ingenuity with which these so-called primitive people built a bridge across a river. First, a man was hoisted to treetop height at the end of a long rope of plaited vine. An enterprise like this called for a high degree of cooperation and planning in advance. Yet the Twa had no political organization as we understand it. Their population was small, and their technology had not advanced beyond the Stone Age. Such bridges helped the Twa in their wandering life. Settled village communities became possible only with another major development. That major advance in the history of Africa began with the domestication of cattle 6,000 or 7,000 years ago.